Hi, and welcome to the Family Scoop.
Where you get the scoop in 10 minutes.
I'm Maddie,
And I'm Toria.
and we're students at BYU. I'm studying family studies.
And I'm studying editing and publishing with a minor in family studies.
We love talking about families. So,
Let's get the scoop. All right, today on today's episode, we're going to be talking about peer pressure and what's going on inside the teenage brain. Now, we've all heard of peer pressure, but before we get started, Maddie, I would like you to tell us anything specific we should know about peer pressure in the context of this podcast episode.
Yeah, that is a great thing to start off with because it's super important to understand that peer pressure normally has a very negative connotation. Like, peer pressure is bad. But actually, peer pressure can be both positive and negative. So it's not really a good or a bad thing. It's just a thing.
It's kind of like a tool, like technology.
Exactly.
Like, it's not inherently good or bad. It's just kind of how it's used.
Exactly. It's a thing to learn how to use. So, of course, we have like the bad side of peer pressure, which is like drugs and skipping school and unsafe sexual practices. Like, all those things can be a negative, like, peer pressure influence. But you can also have positive things, which like academic motivation or new hobbies or gaining self-esteem. Those can all be things that come from positive peer pressure. So understanding that is a great basis as we talk about peer pressure today, because we're not talking about it as a good or a bad thing, just a thing.
Right. And that thing kind of depends on, I guess, the peers who are doing the pressuring. So like peer pressure, if it's good or bad, depends on the friends you have.
Yeah, absolutely. And peers have why we want to talk about it today is because peers have such a big influence on on teenagers.
Right. They're not like the mom.
Exactly. And we also want to talk about how friends are not the only things that influence like how susceptible a teen is to peer pressure. So there's also other things that can make the teen be more susceptible. So we'll talk about that today and why teens are impacted by peer pressure.
Perfect. Then let's get started.
Anyone who's been a teenager at any point in time knows that teenage years are hard. It's like a weird balance between becoming an adult but still being dependent, but not dependent on some things, but definitely dependent on other things.
Right. Yeah.
Like, it's just a weird balance, and it's kind of a harder time in life. But one of the things that teens are really gaining during this time of life is autonomy. And autonomy is split up into 3 different categories that research looks at. The first thing is emotional autonomy, and this is where the teenagers are gaining more adult-like relationships with their family and friends. There's also behavioral autonomy, and this is where the teenagers are learning to make and follow through with their own decisions and actions. And then, of course, cognitive autonomy, which is when they establish their own values, opinions, and beliefs.
Interesting. Yeah, all 3 of those do happen. I just have never had a name for them.
Exactly, just different types of autonomy. So research has even shown that teens can argue and even reason like adults, but the main difference is that they don't have impulse control, the same impulse control that adults do, and they're also more influenced by the rewards of an activity than the risks.
Okay. That makes sense. So if they're developing so much autonomy, why does peer pressure affect them so much? I feel like having that freedom to like decide for yourself is conflicting with this like peer pressure.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense and is a great question. And I feel like the answer is split up in kind of 2 different categories. The first category is, why are peers so important in the teenage years?
That makes sense.
So, of course, there's different reasons that peers are important, but the first one is identity exploration. They are, at this time of life, trying to figure out who they are. And it's really easy to mimic and understand and discover who they are by looking at the people who are doing the same thing. They're like, oh, well, they're doing this, so maybe I should try that. And they're like, oh, well, they're doing this, maybe I should try that.
That's like when I walked around my high school and like everyone looked the same. If you were in this friend group, you all wore the same clothes. If you were in this friend group, you all wore the same clothes and said all the same words.
Exactly. Right? No, that's exactly how it goes. Another thing that kind of goes along with this high school vibe is that they have increased time spent with peers.
Mm.
So never in history until public schools had started basically after the Industrial Revolution when, teenagers actually had time to go to school instead of working. Peers have spent so much time together. And so between school, work, extracurricular activities, teens are spending more time with their peers than even with their family or anyone else in a different age range. And so, of course, you're kind of like them because that's all you spend time around. That's all you know for the majority of your teenage years.
Right, I feel like people who are listening would be like, "Well, duh, that's just kinda how it goes." But then when you said,
Mhm.
like, then obviously they're gonna turn into their peers, I went, "Oh, yeah, that does make sense."
I know, right? It's so funny because it's not like any of these things are like groundbreaking discoveries.
It was just connecting the dots.
Exactly. No, so true. The other two reasons I would say that peers are so important now is because peers help each other with emotional support and they help develop empathy as peers talk to each other about like different struggles and challenges they have. They work on developing empathy and have that level of emotional support from someone who really understands what's going on because they are there the whole time.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they're also practicing for adult relationships. Their peer group is only going to get larger as they go out and go from high school to college, college to a job, like all these different things. Peer groups are only going to expand. And so learning how to interact with your peers is a super important skill. And so those are some of the reasons that peers are so important to a teenager. But then, of course, the other side of the question, which is like why peer pressure affects them so much, we have like a scientific reason, which is dopamine hits.
You mean, like, dopamine hits, like, when you scroll on TikTok, dopamine hits?
Yeah, same type of dopamine hits. But what happens in a teenager's brain is because peers are so important to them for all of those reasons and more, when they are able to like please the peer or show acceptance or like prove that they're part of the group or whatever, they get a dopamine hit and a super strong one at that. Same type of dopamine hit that happens like when we scroll TikTok and Instagram and look at reels like
But
those
this time it's happening, like, with your peers. Oh,
exactly.
interesting.
And so a lot of times like these negative things that happen for peer pressure like doing drugs and drinking and all these things are kind of a double whammy because not only are you getting the dopamine hit of the drug, you're also getting the dopamine hit of being included and being seen as the same in your peer group.
Interesting.
Exactly.
So peer pressure is a chemical reaction in a teenager's brain.
Oh, exactly. But I will say not all teenagers are affected the same way. There are teenagers that are more susceptible to peer pressure, and we kind of know a few things that can cause that, though of course there's many more that research is still looking at. But we know that boys on average are more susceptible to peer pressure than girls, and also teenagers from single parent households or households where the parents are either uninvolved or permissive or authoritarian.
Interesting. That's a lot of information. So is there anything we can do with it to kind of help the teenagers we do know or just help in understanding how it all works so that it can be a better flow or a better perspective in our heads?
Yeah, that's a great question. In terms of like brain development, because all of this is happening as, their teenagers' brains are developing and they're learning how to use this autonomy and all these different things. In terms of that, no.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
we can't really do anything to stop, like, the dopamine hits that come with peer pressure.
And I guess that's probably a good thing, right? That's, like,
Oh,
how it all
yeah.
develops.
Exactly. How are you going to learn if you don't
Learn.
learn? Yes, thank you. But there are things that we can do. So being an understanding and supportive parent or friend or leader is going to be huge. While, of course, the teens get this dopamine hit from being with their peers and doing what they're doing, teens are also still in need of high support and high help from parents and leaders and people that they look up to. that their brains have fully developed.
Right.
That's still an important aspect. And of course, having open conversations with your teenagers about what's going on is also helpful. Them understanding what's happening to their brain and maybe why they're doing what they are is going to be super helpful because you can't fight something that you don't know what it is. Which, of course, you don't always have to fight peer pressure. Peer pressure can be a good thing. But if steering you on a different path, then knowing about it can help a lot.
That makes sense.
And of course, the last thing is that as families, we can learn to not be offended or confused at our teenagers' actions. I know a lot of parents can have these kind of heartbreaking moments where they're like, my teenager would rather be with their friends than with their family. And that's really sad to me. And yeah, it can seem sad, but also when you understand what's going on in their brain, it kind of is a no-brainer. It's not nothing. It's not nothing. It's not anything against you, but just understanding it can help you.
Right. It really is helping them develop when they want to go be with their friends because they're learning in only a way that their friends can teach them.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Well, I feel like I've learned so much today. I feel like I say that every single time, but I really have learned so much.
I hope so.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Make sure to join us next week on The Family Scoop, where we will be talking about how to teach children about sex.
We also have an Instagram account, so check out The Family Scoop to see posted content as well as our references to the studies mentioned in our podcast episodes.
See you guys next week on
The Family Scoop.